Hello again, everybody. This is Ed with another episode of Call Me Mr. Broadstreet. So for this week's review, we're commemorating the 40th anniversary of Tug of War. I'm finally doing this as an album review. Tug of War itself was released April 26, 1982, so can't believe it's been almost 40 years as of the taping of this and when this will actually pop up on my channel. The UK release date was the same. It was the same date, April 26 of 1982. Both the US and UK charts, it went to number one, and it was platinum in the US, platinum being 1 million copies. As we now know, 1 million copies shipped is what the criteria was at the time through the Recording Industry Association of America, the RIAA. So as we're going through, I'm just going to go ahead and show the cover art again, even though you've seen the photos already. And through the back right here. Now, with the album itself, it was produced by George Martin. This would be the first of 3 consecutive albums produced by George Martin. Tug of War in 1982, Pipes of Peace in 1983, and Give My Regards to Broadstreet in 1984. Full albums that George Martin produced. As the main personnel in the album, you've got Paul and Linda McCartney. You also have Eric Stewart. Eric Stewart, his claim to fame was he was part of the musical group 10cc, which had a couple of hits stateside. So Eric Stewart would work on those 3 albums, plus Press to Play from 1986. So this was kind of a little bit of a Mark II for Wings, as it were. They didn't call themselves Wings. This is after Wings had officially broken up, but they were doing the sessions, which started kind of during the summer and fall of 1980 and would continue into 1981 with a break in the sessions due to the unfortunate death of John Lennon, which happened during the sessions. So as we're getting into the tracks right here, we've got Tug of War. This is, of course, the title track to this 1982 album. Now, in one of my previous lyrics book reviews, Paul states that this was actually written prior to John's death in December of 1980. I always envisioned the lyrics to pertain kind of to both of them in a way, just as I said in that review, that past review for the lyrics book. I think we're only catching up to the lyric. In years to come, they may discover what the air we breathe and life we lead are all about. But Paul sings, but it won't be soon enough for me. But I think we are starting to kind of catch up to that. Lyrics, you could probably interpret that part with any meaning, but I just tend to think it's really about, okay, putting things into perspective. I mean, at this point, Paul's turned 40. This event has just happened in his life with the passing of John. He is recording a new album. Wings have just broken up. So a lot of change for Paul at this time. And as I said before, Paul really seems to be getting a positive critical reappraisal from critics and fans, especially over the last 10 years, but maybe even over the last 15 to 20 years. That's just my view. This is just a majestic track produced by George Martin, great orchestration, a very strong album opener in my view. And it segues into the next track. The next track is Take It Away. Now, the unedited single version, if you're looking to seek that out, that's available on the 2001 Wingspan compilation, where it omits the little orchestration continuing from the first track into this one on the album. This is a top 10 track, peaked at number 10 in the US. Very well deserved, very great track. The MTV video, it features Paul, Linda, Ringo, Eric Stewart, and George Martin. It's kind of a retelling of the Beatles' origins. It also stars actor John Hurt. He's kind of recreating the Brian Epstein role in the video. It kind of goes between the early days in the video, as it were, and then sort of modern day. So it's just sort of a retelling of the Beatles in Paul's own way during the video. John Hurt actually did know Brian Epstein in real life. John Hurt's been in a whole bunch of films. V for Vendetta is one of the roles he was in. He was in the film 1984, which was released in 1984. It was one of the remakes of it from the original novel. And again, just a well-deserved top 10 hit. It's got that nostalgic video, a lot of great feelings I have attached to that. Really great lyric, Soul Survivor carrying the load, switches on his radio. It's illustrated in the video. He's driving along, he hears the band, they're signed to a contract. Just really a great merging of video and of song. Fantastic song, well-deserved top 10 hit. One of my absolute favorite Paul songs of all time, without a doubt. You get the third track, Somebody Who Cares. It's a nice song. You get a great guitar solo in the middle of the song. As I was re-listening to this, I think the message of the song is that there's always somebody who cares when your day is going absolutely horrible or when you're going through a tough time. That's kind of the gist of the lyrics. To me, it feels a little bit like Another Day in spots, and maybe in a way it's a more mature sequel to that song, maybe unintentionally. I could be reading a lot into it, but a very nice song to re-listen to. It does almost have a Wings quality to it, to this particular song, so I could easily see the most previous incarnation of Wings from Back to the Egg recording something like this, had things turned out a little bit differently. We get to the next track, What's That You're Doing? This is the only track that's co-written. It's co-written with Stevie Wonder. It's a very funky track, really cool track. This references both the songs Good Night Tonight and She Loves You in the lyrics, in the chorus specifically. With What's That You're Doing, it's definitely a Stevie Wonder influence on this track. Incredibly underrated track. It's also the longest track on the album. And I think you can guess what that is in the song. So, what's that you're doing? You're driving me crazy. Hey, in a good way, of course. Great instrumentals. It just makes me wish they would have done more work together in the 80s. I could have seen a really good collaboration with Paul and Stevie on a couple more songs during the next few years of the 80s, from, say, 1982 to about 86 or 87, occasionally on each other's albums. But again, longest track on the album. Really great track to listen to. We get into the next one, which is Here Today. Just a very heartfelt tribute to John that Paul really never got to say. They did talk quite frequently, even up until John's passing. And this track just really says it all. Just basically the love and admiration between the two of them. John might not have really admitted it, but he did admit it to kind of Yoko during times when it was just him and Yoko kind of talking. And she later expressed that to Paul after John's passing. They really were the best of friends, despite any differences that they may have had. And there was a few, let's be honest, over the years, like any friends or family. Definitely an autobiographical song about their relationship, kind of from the beginning to sort of the end of it in the lyrics. It doesn't really specify times or dates, of course. Just a wonderful lyric, and You Were Here Today for You Were In My Song. It's a perfect tribute to John. Obviously, if John had lived, I don't think this song would have come out, but it definitely just captures the essence of their relationship, in my view, better than any critics or anybody else could say from outside of the relationship. Now we get the next track, Ballroom Dancing. This is a really great rolling song on the album. Just a great rolling piano going throughout the song. It would later also be covered on the 1984 Broad Street album, with an extra verse added in that version that's not here in the original version. It's a great song about the early days, basically ballroom dancing, although it does have also a bit of the early rock and roll feel. It's lots of looking back for Paul at 40 during this time and making this album. He was turning 40 as this album was just being released. Well, after this album was released, but not too far from turning 40, so at this point for him. Very 1940s and 1950s through a 1980s lens. That's kind of how I view the song. Again, this is the original version. You'll find the cover version on Broad Street, which I've already done a review for. The next track is The Pound is Sinking. So just kind of a nice whimsical track. It's kind of a character type song for Paul, not really anything autobiographical. Great lyric, the markets are falling and only the strong are survivors. About 1:48 in, 1 minute and 48 seconds in, you get a very great transition into kind of a song within a song, if it were. Great lyric, I can't be held responsible now for something that didn't happen. I knew you for a minute, and then Paul just screams this vocal, oh, it didn't happen, only for a minute, your heart just wasn't in it anymore. Not quite sure what it means, but just the way he delivers it with conviction. His voice reaches a vocal range in the song where he soars in kind of that rocker voice. If you will, think of kind of the Back to the Egg through Broad Street time frame, so basically this 1979 to 1984 time frame, and even from before. I mean, he still had a lot of vocal range, particularly during this time frame, especially during the first 15 to even 20 years of his career without a lot of noticeable difference, in my view at least. So the next song is Wanderlust. This is actually during the London Town recording sessions that Paul wrote the song, thought of the song, but he saved it for later. There was basically the threat from the captain of another boat they were staying on. Wings were staying on this boat, and I think part of it involved, you guys are, the captain was very strict, saying, hey, you guys, you can't be smoking the drugs on this, on this ship. And Paul's like, well, come on, we don't have to take this from you. So Wings went on to another boat that was called Wanderlust. That's where the song title comes from. Paul kind of describes it as meaning freedom and escape. Pretty sure this is in the lyrics book as well that just came out. It's an amazing song, and again, it also would be re-recorded for the Broad Street 1984 soundtrack. It's hard to pick between the two versions. His vocals are really good in both versions. This one might have a slight edge just because it's the first version, but really you can't go wrong with either, in my view, either version of the song. Only about 2 years apart for both of them. And the next track we get is called Get It. It's recorded with Carl Perkins. So Carl Perkins was definitely an influence on the Beatles. It's kind of a nice country feel to the track. Carl was just definitely one of Paul's heroes, really for all the Beatles. Only John would never get to work with Carl, at least on a solo basis. I know they all met, I think, during the 60s when they were covering one of the songs. I can't remember the song off the top of my head. Pretty sure it was a Ringo vocal. If anybody does remember, please put it in the comments below. But I can't remember it off the top of my head. Should have had that in my notes here, but it's a pleasant song. It's certainly not bad. Again, a very countryish feeling. I think Paul felt comfortable with having someone kind of familiar there, especially during the sessions during this time. As far as I know, the only other time they really collaborated was there was a 1993 video that they collaborated on. I can't remember the name of it. That may have also been during the Off the Ground era, somewhere around there. I think there was an unreleased song during this time called My Old Friend, which I think, interesting story that I don't actually have in my notes, but Carl kind of said that to Paul, and Paul just absolutely breaks up during the session and has to excuse himself from the room. Carl Perkins turns to Linda and goes, what's going on? I just said, think of me now and again, my old friend. And Linda explains to him that's one of the last things John said to Paul during one of their last phone conversations before that. So yeah, you could see that that was very unintentional, obviously. He couldn't have known. But again, just a very nice track, certainly pleasant. It segues into the next track, Be What You See, Link. That's actually on the name of the track. It's Link in parentheses. Again, it segues from the last song. It's only about 45 seconds long. I'm probably going to spend more time talking about this than the actual length of the song itself. It's kind of a nice atmospheric synthesizer song. The only lyric, the one you wanted to be is now the one you see. Kind of a little mystical lyric in my view. I kind of wish he would have expanded on this riff, and it's much like the Mumbo Link off of Wildlife, where you get an unfinished track. You get something where, Paul seems to have a really good idea, and sometimes to his detriment, in my view. He'll take a good idea, but he won't go far enough with it. So I think it could have done with some expansion. He could have turned it into another bit of a song here. That's my view, at least, of the song. We get the second to last track on the album, Dress Me Up as a Robber. Kind of disco light on this track. Again, this disco vibe probably would have gone better on London Town, I think, as opposed to here. Now, with the song, it's the weakest song in my view, and it doesn't really make it a bad song per se, but it's just not one I spin too often. Some good falsetto vocals, nice lyrics. Here's that word again from the Ringo review, the Ringo the Fourth review, but pleasant enough, but I'd have to categorize this as my weakest track on the album. But it does redeem itself with the next track. The next track is the #1 hit off the album in the US. Everybody knows it, from the hardcore fans to the more casual fans out there viewing this video. Of course, we're talking about Ebony and Ivory. Now, again, as I said, it was a #1 hit off the album in the US. There is another version. It's actually in the archive version, which I will get to at another point, but it only has Paul on vocals only. He wrote this song, himself, but he thought, well, this would be a good one to sing with Stevie Wonder, which they obviously did on the version we all know. But the version with Paul's vocals only, kind of interesting, but I can see where he went with this version. This is the definitive version. This song was all over radio. You had the video all over MTV. Again, it's Paul and Stevie kind of duetting, trading verses. It's a nice message of inclusion. It might be a bit simple given all the problems that we're still facing out there. Still, it is very melodic, and there is a reason it was a hit. You know, I think in a lot of ways there's too much retro criticism all over the song, in my view, when folks tend to knock it now. But remember, at the time, a huge hit. You heard it all over the radio. It's definitely a great album closer. Again, the video was all over MTV. You get kind of Paul and Stevie, they're sort of in this white room, kind of a black and white piano, I believe, regular black piano, black and white keys, black and white outfits, kind of matching. So again, it's, a performance clip. There is a separate version out there that I don't think made it to the McCartney years. It was filmed with the solo Paul version only. It's a different video. It doesn't feature Paul or Stevie in it. It's well worth seeking out if you get to see it somewhere online. I'll just put it that way. In closing, I think this album is essential. I really think this is an essential album for McCartney. It proves why he stayed so long in this business. I would put this up with songs or albums rather, I should say. Albums like Flaming Pie, of course, Flowers in the Dirt, Back to the Egg, McCartney, Band on the Run, Venus and Mars, Egypt Station, Chaos and Creation, Memory Almost Full. That's kind of watermark albums in Paul's career, in my view. So definitely worth picking up, definitely essential. So I hope everybody enjoyed the review, but again, 40 years. I can't wait to do the 40-year reviews for Pipes of Peace and give my regards to Broad Street. I'm hoping to do that for other albums, other solo Beatles albums as well. If I haven't gotten to them, I can certainly go back and do a retroactive 40-year review, or as we're coming up on 40 years with a lot of different albums out there. So that's about it. I hope everybody's doing well. And just wanted to say, if you're enjoying the videos, please give a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. And I will see everybody in the next review. Thanks so much. Bye.